So obviously, the hot topic in fandom right now, Star Wars fandom in particular, is the Acolyte show, and the third episode has been extraordinarily divisive. I've written a couple articles about this show, including a very scathing piece about the third episode that has really made the rounds, especially on in YouTube channels that are very critical of Disney Star Wars. And I find that I am probably a lot more moderate when it comes to criticism of Star Wars and of Disney than a lot of these channels. And not to, I just feel like there are this particular culture war. You see kind of like the sides rearing up, right? You have a lot of people defending Star Wars, defending Disney Star Wars in particular, defending the diversity and all of that, and they write off everyone who disagrees with them as toxic fans, as the fandom menace and all this crap. But then you do have a lot of YouTube channels that seem pretty hell-bent on hating Star Wars, the new Star Wars, to the point where, a lot of them didn't even bother with Andor, and it is kind of a brand at this point. Now, I would like, my goal is to offer criticism in order for Star Wars to improve. I would like Disney, I would like Bob Iger, I would like Kathleen Kennedy, I would like all of these people to listen to my criticism and think, maybe he's making sense. Maybe we could improve Star Wars. Maybe we could make Star Wars for the fans again, rather than for this sort of elusive new fandom that we're trying to create that's losing money, that's losing audience. And the fact of the matter is the enthusiasm for Star Wars is at, well, I don't want to say an all-time low, but it is certainly in a valley. We are not at the level of hype and excitement that we were going into, say, The Force Awakens, or after the premiere of The Mandalorian. There have been these high moments during Disney's stewardship of the Star Wars IP, and right now we are in a valley. And I would say that's also true of the MCU. I wanted to start by reading a little bit of this piece from Inverse, and then I want to talk a little bit about what I've been calling the hostile takeover of genre fiction or of nerd culture. I made a video recently called The Imposters, and I have a whole bunch of ideas on how to pursue that idea and that thesis, this idea that through, or under the guise of DEI stuff, under the guise of like wokeness or whatever, a lot of creators, a lot of showrunners, writers, screenwriters have come into these properties, things like Wheel of Time, Witcher, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, even True Detective, and they are making shows that promote this diversity and stuff, but aren't really very well made. These are imposters, not because they're not fans, not because they want diversity, but because they're prioritizing the wrong thing and they're not telling great stories. And I just think a lot of them either are not equipped to tell those stories, they're not talented enough, or they have this philosophy that they have to make these things their own. And whatever the case, these imposters have taken over a lot of the stories and franchises that we grew up with, that we love. And it's not so much, my philosophy is not so much that there are strong female characters or anything like that. It's that they are promoting propaganda rather than telling great stories. You can have diversity and strong female characters and all of that without creating a bunch of uproar in the fans and in the fandom if you make quality products, if you're telling great stories, if you're making movies that make sense rather than, a new trilogy where every single movie basically contradicts the movie that came before it because nobody decided that they were going to come up with an entire story before they started filming the movies, which, seems like pretty much the most basic shit I can even imagine, but oh well. All right, so this is an interesting and provocative headline. Livy Scott wrote this. I don't know if Livy wrote the headline because it looked like there was a previous headline that was less succinct and less provocative, but the Acolyte isn't ruining Star Wars, you are. Now, she talks about, she opens by saying, obviously not every show is going to appeal to everybody, and there are some problems with these, since Disney's been involved. But, nonetheless, whether you know them as the fandom menace or a cluster of blue checkmark users on Twitter, it's impossible to escape their orbit. Well, I mean, unless you're not one of us chronically online suckers, right? Most people actually don't have a clue that there's this big culture war going on within something like Star Wars. Anyways, the same folks that review bombed diverse swings like Marvel's Eternals and the Lord of the... A lot of people didn't like the Eternals, not just this cluster of blue checkmarks on Twitter. And the Lord of the Rings prequel, The Rings of Power, again, a lot of people disliked The Rings of Power for a lot of reasons that had nothing to do with, like, diversity or whatever, have now set their sights on The Acolyte. To hear them tell it, the series is the worst thing that's ever happened to Star Wars, and its showrunner, Leslie Headland, is just as fiendish as Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy. To them, The Acolyte's woke agenda is something to be feared. It's ruining Star Wars. It's poisoning pop culture itself. It needs to be stopped by any means necessary. Any means necessary? I don't know if making YouTube videos is any means necessary. They're suicide bombing Disney. Anyways, we realize how ridiculous that all sounds, right? God, I hope so. Do it. But if not, let's try this. The Acolyte is not actually ruining Star Wars, but the bigoted backlash is definitely ruining the fun for everyone else. Now, see, yes, there are some bigots, and there are, again, some, I swear, there are some YouTubers and whatnot who are just going to hate everything that comes out of Star Wars. No doubt. Let's be realistic, right? We know this is true. We know that there is going to be some people who defend every last thing that Disney puts out because it's like part of their shtick, and there's going to be some people who attack it no matter what because that's part of their shtick. But let's also accept the fact that this does not describe everyone who's critical of the Acolyte, and this kind of piece, which is written all the time, is designed absolutely 100% to basically just say anybody who is against the Acolyte, anybody who doesn't like the Acolyte, must be one of these rabid, frothing at the mouth bigots, right? Who and they're just a small minority. Most fans love this show. Now, see, I don't think that that's possible. Even if it has been review bombed on Rotten Tomatoes, 17% suggests that there are a lot of fans who do not like this. Anyways. Let's get gaslit some more. It's not outright shocking to see something like the Acolyte marred by racist, misogynistic, and even anti-LGBTQ backlash. That Star Wars devotees would share multiple bad faith treatises about this series on YouTube or tank its audience on Rotten Tomatoes is just par for the course at this point. But this is, after all, the same fandom that launched consistent attacks against actors like John Boyega, Kelly Marie Tran, and Daisy Ridley. The same fandom that were publicly admonished by Ewan McGregor himself when Obi-Wan Kenobi faced similar pushback. Oh my god, the lead actor of a show that everybody dogged on pushed back on that? I didn't actually know he did, but that is not shocking at all. Oh, okay. Also, people were really mad at J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, two straight cis white males. I think they're straight. I'm pretty sure they're white and cis. No, but I mean, yes, people were... I don't think John Boyega got that much criticism, honestly, but Kelly Marie Tran did because her character wasn't great, and she showed up in a movie that a lot of people really hated. Daisy Ridley, I think a lot of people were excited for her character, actually. I think that once the thing about her being a Mary Sue came out, a lot of people started to notice some of the bad writing. I like Daisy Ridley and I like Rey. I actually think that, I've said this before, that I think that the stuff about her being a Mary Sue was way over the top because she grew up hard, right? She was trained on the street, basically. She's like a street smarts type character. Now, do I think they could have done a better job at showing her, getting good at stuff? Yes, of course. She gets the Force a little too quickly, and it's never really explained. If they had really explained that, the Force was awakening, and that's why Kylo Ren was so powerful. Anyways, they could have handled it better. But then again, you look at Luke Skywalker, and he gets some pretty good Force stuff pretty fast too. So if she's a Mary Sue, I'm pretty sure he's a Mary Sue also. So I just found that line of criticism very silly. But see, I have my own opinions, and they don't necessarily fit on one side or the other, which is why ultimately I end up just, all alone in the wilderness with everyone hating me. But anyways, not to self pity. No, I like where I'm at because I feel like what I believe is what I believe, and I'm not part of your clique or your clique, and I'm just gonna tell you how I feel, and my feelings can change. You know, and another thing is that I actually left every single sequel movie feeling pretty good because I went to each of them with my kids and we got dressed up and we had a really fun time. And so I actually went to those movies with such a positive attitude and outlook that, you know, like after The Last Jedi, my son was out in the parking lot with a lightsaber. We have a pretty sweet like light up lightsaber. And he was like doing Jedi things in his Jedi robe, and he was like, I don't know, 7 years old or something. And it was so fun. We had such a good time. That actually, when we went to that movie, there was like the Cantina Band. They had a bunch of actors. It was at Alamo Draft House, and it was just such a fun experience that like I didn't care that much that certain parts of the movie bothered me, right? But in retrospect, I go back to a lot of these movies and I go back and I look at a lot of this stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, that really doesn't hold up, does it? So I'm okay with changing my opinion. I'm okay with like the evidence or the change in, you know, what's happening affecting my line of thinking. And that is definitely happening right now as I see more and more stuff. Like at one point you can say, oh my, okay, like you guys are freaking out way too much. This stuff isn't so bad. But as more and more we head in this direction, that's when it's like, oh, okay, like this is definitely going too far in this direction. You can see it's not making much sense for business. You can see it's having an effect on the quality of series outside of something like Andor. Even Mandalorian went super downhill. And so I think that's when it's like, all right, what's happening? Let's look at this. Anyways, the problem is that nothing has changed. In the 10 years since this vocal minority suddenly cried out against diverse casting, out of the void, out of the blue, all of this was just you know, somehow Palpatine returned. Sorry. And more nuanced storytelling. More nuanced. Motherfucker, no. The Acolyte is not nuanced storytelling. Again, like, I absolutely want nuanced storytelling, which is why I'm constantly tooting the horn of Andor, because it is so nuanced. But the Acolyte is like, you know, if a wood block falling on your head was nuance, then this would be nuance. Okay, since in the 10 years since this vocal minority suddenly cried out against diverse casting and more nuanced storytelling, they've yet to learn their lesson. Oh, you haven't learned your lesson, kids. And that's that you need to step in line. Get in line right now. All right. Their arguments are bleeding into even the casual discourse surrounding the Acolyte. Comments on set design and screenwriting have turned into misogynistic microaggressions against Headland. What? What? Link to something, please. I want to know what that is. Even critiques on the series have been weaponized by its haters. I mean, sure, yeah, critiques against the series have been weaponized. No, I have actually seen some videos with people say, like, people positive about my article about Acolyte Episode 3 that I find lack nuance that I'm trying to bring to this. But that's okay. Not everyone has to come at it from the same angle. I disagree often with people who are cool about me. Like, they like what I write when I write something like that. And I'm fine with that. But anyways, there's no room for nuance when it comes to the Acolyte. You either stand with the series, flaws and all, or you're irrevocably against it. I mean, I feel like she's part of the problem here, man. Like, this is not a nuance. This is not nuance. This is not, I mean, this is saying you have to pick sides. Not that that we should be better than that. The origins of this toxicity aren't difficult to figure out. At the end of the day, it boils down to entitlement. Many male fans feel like they own the franchise and are determined to safeguard it from anyone that could challenge that ownership. That makes it hard for disparate groups to coexist, and it's even harder for any non-white, non-male creatives hoping to tell stories within the franchise. Okay. Entitlement. And that brings me back all the way to Mass Effect 3 and the ending there. When I started writing, that was when I first started writing about stuff like this. And people called gamers entitled little emperors, and all this, entitled gamers want this, entitled game. It's so remarkable to me that even after all this time, no, it's not actually. I mean, this over 10 years ago. It's not remarkable. Of course, it's not. It's not even surprising. I mean, it's just the fact. It's just the stupid fact that this is what they do. This is how they defend their. I don't know. It's like a corporate thing. These are corporate white knights, right? Like, all right, I'm gathering my thoughts. Sorry. All right, so with the ending of Mass Effect 3 and with the Acolyte, what's happening is that the press is coming to the defense of the people making these products and saying, just like this article says, the Acolyte isn't the problem. It's not ruining Star Wars. You are. Same thing in 2014 when it was, video games, are being ruined by gamers. Well, I mean, gamers are the ones buying them. And fans are the ones going to these movies, subscribing to these services, and they if they are ruining it, well, what are you gonna do about that? Like, I mean, then it just doesn't. It's so illogical and crazy to me. Now, obviously, there are a lot of people who still like the Acolyte. I mean, if you go to the Acolyte's Reddit, there's a post about this very article, and they're like, yeah. All Star Wars is good as long as you want to have fun. Yeah. And another comment. It's a sci-fi story. It's a space western. It's a piece of fiction that's there to entertain. Yeah. But it's not. It's not entertaining. I mean, this is the problem, right? The problem is that it's not entertaining. It's not... I mean, yes, it's sci-fi. It's so weird to me. Okay, this is why I sort of feel like a lot of these people aren't... And I don't want to use the no Scotsman fallacy here, but I feel like a lot of these people who are supporting shows like The Acolyte are either, like, they're not, yeah, I'm going to say this, they're not real fans. They are not smart. Let's say that. It's not that they're not real fans, it's they're fucking stupid. No. Okay. Just because something is sci-fi or fantasy doesn't mean that it can just get away with being garbage. That's so dismissive of the genre you're apparently defending. Like saying, if the argument is, well, I can't believe that people hate this. It's, it's not great, but it's fantasy, so who cares? Like, no, that's a terrible argument, right? But I wanted to talk about this last bit in this article. What these male fans feel like they own the franchise and are determined to safeguard it from anyone that could challenge that ownership. So in my video about the imposters, I talk about a hostile takeover, and this is what I'm talking about right here. What is a hostile takeover? What is a hostile takeover of nerd culture, of sci-fi, fantasy, video games, tabletop games? What is that? What's happening? Okay? Because, my whole life I was into this stuff, and it was almost impossible to find any chicks who were, right? Like, almost impossible. And even now, I mean, there's more girls who are into gaming, there's more girls who are into Star Wars, but let's be fucking realistic here. It is still a boys' club, and not because we're actually trying to safeguard it from girls. Though I think now a lot of not just men, but a lot of old school fans of these things are trying to safeguard it from the corporations who seem determined to ruin it by putting talentless people in charge, by putting ideologues in charge instead of people with good ideas. There was this Capcom thing, the Capcom super elections, and this is really interesting. They did a survey about their games and whatnot, and if you go, let me go to this survey here real quick. All right, so this survey, they've 254,148 participants, right? These are the people who voted in the Capcom super election. So these are the people who are into video games, into Capcom games, and this is a sample of, just gaming community. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, 254,000. 82% of the survey participants ended up being male. It was a voluntary survey. It's not like they were. So 82% male, 14% female, 4% other. Most of these were in their 20s or 30s. I'm a little disappointed in my fellow 40s, only 12%. Very few in their, above their 50s, 60s. Very few in the 10s. Obviously, they're not going to be as interested in doing surveys. Well, I don't. Anyways, tens, I guess teens. 82%, right? To me, and I've said this a long time, why, if 82% roughly of your fan base is male, are you trying so hard to turn Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, True Detective, all these things that are, I'm not saying that women don't enjoy them. I actually think women enjoy a lot of those things historically. Over the last few decades, they've enjoyed those things. Why are you trying to turn that into something it's not? It's just a little crazy to me. And I've said this before. I'm going to repeat myself, but Disney, we don't go in and try to change female spaces to male spaces. We're not trying to change Disney princess movies into a place where it's just as good and just as exciting for boys. Romance novels, chick flicks, none of those things are no one is trying to change those things to be 50% male. Because if you did a survey on all that stuff, you'd see very similar results. Romance novels, you'd probably have like 98% female, right? Disney princess movies, that's going to definitely skew female. It's sort of crazy. So I grew up very hard to find girls to play D&D with, right? Even now with my gaming group, very rarely do any of the spouses or girlfriends sit down and play D&D. Much more likely to play a board game or something. Very, very few girls I know are as into video games as the guys I know. Again, not for lack of trying. A lot of my guy friends have spouses, have girlfriends. They just don't play the same, or they don't play the same kind of games that we play. They don't play as much as we do. I have a son and daughter. I raised them both on the same stuff, and my son is 100 times more likely to want to play video games than my daughter. Her boyfriend, the last couple weeks, has been playing through God of War and God of War Ragnarok, and she'll sit on the couch with him while he plays, but he's the one playing, right? She has no interest in playing those games. She'll play Call of Duty with me once in a while. My son will be on Roblox, Minecraft, the finals, all kinds of stuff with his friends, but that's my daughter, even though she was raised with video games, raised with a dad who had them around all the time, just doesn't care as much. So why is it that that these things, right, that these specific things are being pushed so far in the other direction? And here's the thing, I would love it if, and I think everybody would be fine with it. Well, not everybody, but I think a lot of people would be fine with it if we were like, okay, well, we want more, strong female characters in Marvel and in Star Wars and all that. And that would be great, except for that it feels like we're getting to a point where, we're getting shows like She-Hulk or The Acolyte where it's like pretty much only the female characters are strong. I mean, The Acolyte has soul and he's cool, but look at something like Yord. Like he's been described as a himbo. He is a himbo. He is just made to look so stupid. And it's just sort of this pattern, right? This growing pattern of we're making stuff not for the old fans, not for the fans who made these popular, and not for guys. We're trying to make this more and more and more for girls. I think this is having an actually not a great effect on that. I think because the series themselves are having quality issues, they're not as well written, they're not as exciting, they don't have the same sort of structure or format that made these things popular in the first place. Like Star Wars is very much a heroic fantasy. It's a space opera. It's not even science fiction. It's a space fantasy. It's a heroic space fantasy, and we're getting further and further away from that. Now, granted, I, as someone who loves Andor, I love that we take different approaches to Star Wars, and I think there is room for something like The Acolyte, like a mystery. I just don't think it's very well made, and I think that this push towards making it, the Force is female or whatever is such a misguided thing. I think like, okay, Disney already has like the cash cow when it comes to its princess movies. It has a lot of stuff that appeals to girls, and I think that's very smart to have a lot of stuff that appeals to girls. It's weird to me though that you get Marvel and you get Star Wars and you decide that even though these are wildly more popular with boys, that you're going to make them that you're going to start making them, for women instead. Not because you don't want, again, I've said this before, the half-interested girlfriend, that's a very important demographic. But those people like the half-interested girlfriend, people like my kids, people like my parents, I am the core audience, and I bring all of them with me. And if I'm not interested, or if I don't think they're going to be interested, they don't come. And I don't even suggest a lot of this stuff to people anymore. Ahsoka, I didn't even bother. Like I said, yeah, you could check it out, but I know what my kids are going to say. They're going to watch that and they're going to think, no, this isn't very good. They like good TV, My kids like shows like Severance, True Detective. They loved Andor, first seasons of Mandalorian. I guess that's all stuff I like, right? But they also, they watched Sopranos, and they love that. They didn't watch that with me. They just watched that, and they love that, right? Breaking Bad. You watch enough quality TV, when you get stuff like this, like The Acolyte, or like Ahsoka, or like Boba Fett. I mean, we tried watching Boba Fett. They gave up. You watch this, Obi-Wan, they gave up. They watched like an episode or two, they gave up. If you watch quality, and you know what quality is, then when you watch mediocrity, it stands out like a sore thumb. And the problem isn't just that we're trying to have strong female characters, that we want more diversity. That's not the problem. The problem is you place such a high priority on that you're actively trying to push away the old fandom. You're actively trying to make this for some new audience. That's a hostile takeover. You're changing something that didn't need to be changed. Not in that regard. We needed new settings. We needed new characters. We needed to get away from the Skywalker stuff. All of that was the change we needed. We didn't need shows that have really bland. You see, I think like The Acolyte's like it's all quantity over quality. Like there's a whole bunch of female characters, just none of them are particularly interesting. And it's just like in Obi-Wan, the Inquisitor, Reva, I think her name was. She wasn't allowed to just be a bad guy. She had to have a redemption arc, which was just so lame. Like give us a good bad guy. And this is what I'm predicting for May. She's going to have some sort of redemptive journey to the light. And I just think that's just lame. So, anyways, I've rambled on long enough. I just find this attempt to take over a franchise, take over a fandom, take over, D&D, Lord of the Rings, not just become part of that, not just join, not just say, hey, I want to be part of this fandom. I don't think anyone ever had a problem with that. I would have always been thrilled if I could get more chicks in my, in junior high or high school, get more chicks to play D&D with me. That would have been awesome. But what we don't need, what I think people really bristle at, is this idea that no, our games, our way of playing, is no longer acceptable. Stellar Blade, not acceptable. It's toxic because it sexualizes women. But Hades is cool. We're going to all be horny for Hades. There's this weird, illogical mindfuckery going on that people are going. It's not that they're trying to safeguard. They're not trying to always gatekeep or whatever. I mean, there's some of that, sure. But it's this idea that like you are actively coming into our fandom and our culture, and you're not just trying to be part of it or contribute to it, but you're trying to say that our shit is bad and needs to be thrown away and to make room for your shit. And we're going to change everything. Everything that you love, we're going to change it. And it's just like George R.R. Martin was talking about with, screenwriters. 99% of screenwriters these days they take something and they want to make it their own, and they almost always make it worse. And it's all part and parcel of this idea that we're coming in, we're changing it, we're making it our own, we're taking it away, and you can just fuck off. You fandoms that made this, that made Star Wars popular, that made Lord of the Rings popular, all of you, you're the problem. We're going to come in, we're going to change it to be like what we want. And you just, if you say anything, if you have any problems with it, you're a bigot, and tough luck. So that's it. I realize I'm rambling a little bit. I probably need some sleep or some caffeine or both. But anyways, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I appreciate you. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think. I do have an idea to make a little bit more coherent, actually maybe write some stuff instead of just ramble, but stuff on this idea of the imposters and the hostile takeover of nerd culture. So thanks. Peace.